Well, Senator Bernie Sanders is doing his usual attacking the Democratic Party. He's still upset because he lost the 2016 nomination because many of the party's officials got behind Hillary Clinton and not him. So he went on the Andrew Schultz podcast and talked about a number of things. And then he claims that the party is not for the people. Okay. All right, listen to this.
I have to ask this. I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you. We have a question we want to ask about what happened to you in 2016 with this Bernie Bros movement, where your followers are seeing they have a racism problem, a misogyny problem. Do you think that's a super PAC thing behind that?
That was the Democratic establishment. That was the.
Wow. Okay.
That was just, they were sitting there. We had a lot of young people. We had people of color, and they create this kind of myth with the help of the corporate media and all that stuff.
It's kind of interesting to that note is during this election, the podcast space, which the Democrats largely avoided, they feel had some influence in the election, and they started to label us the podcast bros and said that we were sexist and we were racist and bigoted. It's almost like it's the exact same strategy to get you out of there.
Yeah, that's what the liberal elite China does. They run away. Look, again, I would hope that everybody who's watching the program is that we as a nation have got to end all forms of bigotry, right?
Yes.
That I start off as a basic assumption.
Unless it's to your close friends, right?
Yeah, whether it's racism or sexism, homophobia, or xenophobia, whatever it is. And liberal Democrats talk about that all the time. And then you get to what we call identity politics.
Yeah.
That you're black, you're wonderful, you're tremendous, you're gay, you're the greatest human being on earth.
Yeah.
And rather than say, what do you stand for?
Exactly.
You're gay, that's fine, who cares?
Yeah.
But what do you stand for?
Yeah.
Is every gay person brilliant and wonderful and great? No, of course not. Everybody's a human being.
Yeah.
So the issue is what you stand for, which gets you back to what we discussed earlier, class politics, in the sense of which side are you on? Are you going to stand with working families? Are you going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage or not? Are you going to fight to guarantee health care to all people or not? Are you going to demand that the wealthiest people start paying their fair share of taxes or not? Those are the issues. And no one cares what color you are, what your gender is, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, allow me to unpack what you just heard. If there's been a blind spot of Senator Bernie Sanders for a very long time, it's on this issue of race. Were there African Americans supporting Senator Bernie Sanders? Yes. Ben Jealous, Cornel West, and others. But the reality is, Bernie Sanders had a black problem. He did. Bernie Sanders could not get the black vote. Bernie Sanders right now still complains about what happened in 2016 and 2020, and he's convinced that he was going to get the nomination. And then there are people who are far left progressives who believe that. I don't. Because the reality is here, America is not a far left progressive nation. It is not. We can sit here and play games all we want to, but the fact of the matter is, it's not. You're a Democrat, you're likely going to have to be a centrist or close to a centrist, because part of the problem with the Democratic Party is the tent is so big. And frankly, it's not as narrow as the Republican Party. Okay? The other thing is this here. Bernie Sanders really has a problem with what he keeps calling identity politics. Bernie Sanders sounds like a right-winger when he does. See, he keeps saying the whole deal, oh, you're black, oh, you're gay, you're great, you're amazing. Well, first of all, Bernie, there was a reason that was a song called Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. There's a reason Roberta Flack and Donna Hathaway had their song as well. There's a reason Aretha Franklin remade the song Respect after Otis Redding did it, and it actually became a women's anthem. Bernie Sanders doesn't want to deal with the reality that, yes, in this country, women, especially black women, have been grotesquely marginalized. And we know what happens to African Americans. Now I know some Bernie Sanders supporters right now say, well, Roland, wait a minute. He was riding hard with Reverend Jackson. He was working on the campaign or whatever. Yes, that's absolutely true. But it's not like Vermont does not have issues with mass incarceration. It's not like Vermont doesn't have issues when it comes to race. See, I just want people to understand really what we're dealing with here. And I remember when this was a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I can't remember. Bernie had done an interview with GQ and was complaining, railing against these identity politics. And I remember sending a text message to the guy who ran his campaign, Jeff Weaver, who was with Our Revolution. I said, Jeff, I'm gonna tell you right now, Bernie Sanders keeps doing this, I'm gonna light his ass up. So Jeff's like, hey, can I set up a meeting between you and the senator? Yes, you can. So I went to Capitol Hill, and I met with him. And I told Senator Bernie Sanders to his face, I said, you keep railing against identity politics, and what you don't understand is you're speaking negatively about black people. See, Bernie's whole view is this thing is about class. Nah, bruh. Not just about class. You could be black and upper class, middle class, lower class, your ass still black. This is Bernie's problem. And see, Bernie Sanders doesn't want to admit that yes, Bernie bros were sexist. Some were sexist, some were racist. There's a reason why a number of former Bernie bros supporting Trump. Because what Senator Bernie Sanders represents, and I'm telling y'all, I know this, see, people need to understand why where there's a symbiotic relationship. Because Senator Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, in many ways, are the same. Tear the system down. So the people that back them are like, yo, tear this shit down. I don't give a damn. Tear it down. It's very similar language. So they identify with one another. And so the Bernie people, they're mad at Congressman Jim Clyburn. First of all, Congressman Jim Clyburn endorsed then Vice President Biden. He couldn't cast every ballot. Congressman Jim Clyburn represents one congressional district in South Carolina. He don't control the whole state. Do people respect him? Yes. Do they value his perspective? Yes. But people made individual decisions. And see, this is what Bernie Sanders and all of these other white progressives don't understand. Black people are some of the smartest political minds you will find. So let me show y'all what happened in 2020. Black people, so remember, Iowa, well, I think Buttigieg won. Then they went to Nevada. Bernie won at the caucus there. Then they come to South Carolina. And if y'all want to see the racism among these white Democrats, especially Bernie's people, they shit it all over the black people. These are black, they're rural. We have no chance of winning the state. So we don't care what they think. Really? Here's what black people did in 2020. Black people went, who do I think can beat Trump? Black people said, we got Vice President Kamala Harris. We got Senator Cory Booker. We got Pete Buttigieg. We got Amy Klobuchar. We got Tulsi Gabbard. Late in, Bloomberg jumped in. Deval Patrick jumped in. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. I know I'm leaving off about 2 or 3 people. But that literally was the Democratic field. And black people went, who do we think can beat this white man, Trump? This white man right here. This old white man, we think he can beat Trump. And they picked Biden. Was Vice President Biden the most charismatic candidate? Nope. Was Vice President Biden the most energetic candidate? Nope. Black people are pragmatic voters. Black people, see, everybody forget, black people weren't sitting here riding for Obama. August of 2008, hell, he was down, August 2007, he was down 20 points to Hillary Clinton. His black numbers were real low. Because black people like, man, I don't know, this brother got a shot. Because black people said, I don't know, white folks gonna vote for him. See, we gotta wake up to a reality. 71% of the electorate in 2024 were white voters. If you put all the black voters and Hispanic voters and Asian voters and Native American voters all together, you get 29%. So Bernie Sanders is still bothered. Because he lost. So then Bernie Sanders talked about the elites, and this is what the elites say, and this is what the elites think. Well, Bernie, can you please name the elites? See, this is why I don't let people get away with that language. It's the elites. Name them. Name them. People go, well, Bernie, how many bills have you actually passed? It's a fair question. So he is still bothered because he could not get the votes. And Breonna and all these people can run around, oh, he didn't have a fair shot. No. Bernie Sanders would have got dusted even more so. Because you know what they would have did to him? Which is what they did to Obama, they did to Biden. Socialist. How well did the Republicans calling Biden a socialist work in Florida? What the hell do you think they would have called Senator Bernie Sanders? So Senator Bernie Sanders keeps talking about class. Okay. Let's see here. Bernie Sanders and AOC tour. And they keep talking about, oh my God, how popular they are among Democrats. Okay. So it was the Fighting Oligarchy tour. Okay. So they went to, just keep it right here, keep it on me. So they went to Omaha, Nebraska as the first stop. Y'all know in Nebraska, it's a sea of red and there's a blue dot. That's Omaha. Then they went to Las Vegas. Then they went to Denver. Then they went to LA. Okay. They didn't go to West Virginia. They didn't go to North Carolina. They didn't go to Georgia. They didn't go to Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas. I can keep naming them. So if Senator Sanders wants to have a conversation about class, why don't you go where the class discrepancies really are? I'll be honest with y'all. Being a Democrat and doing a tour fighting oligarchy and going to Omaha, Denver, Las Vegas, and LA, that shit ain't fight. First of all, help me understand something. See, y'all, since we really want to go there, you say it's about class, you keep talking about working class, working class, working class, working class. How many working class people do you know walk around going, so Mustafa, what are your thoughts on that oligarchy? They don't say that. They don't even use those phrases. So you're talking about how we're not for the people, we're not for the... No! Senator Sanders and AOC are actually talking to the elites. Him sitting down with those four dudes, all right. I have never received an invite from Senator Bernie. Matter of fact, I'm just going to go ahead and just, before I go to my panel, I'm about to mess y'all up. When Bernie Sanders ran for president, Bernie Sanders wasn't doing no black media. That his folks were trying to get him to do it. I called Marcus Farrell, called Tesla and Figaro, called a sister who was his campaign man. Y'all, I'm trying to tell y'all, they were trying to get him to do that. We booked him on the Tom Joyner Morning Show. Let me tell you what happened. I got the text message. Don't make me pull out receipts. Bernie was out west. He canceled. I lit that ass up. Ben Jealous called me. Yo, Ro, hold up. Before you go off on social, let me work on it. Ben Jealous hit. Dog, you cannot cancel the Tom Joyner Morning Show. Because he didn't think it was important. Now, he eventually came on. He's like, well, that's just too early for me to get up. You running for fucking president. Get your ass up. That video we just showed y'all is the Achilles heel of Bernie Sanders. Is that he acts like you can remove race and only focus on class, and that is absolutely stupid. And he keeps making the same mistake, and I'm just going to let you know, Senator, you were never going to get the nomination because you could not win enough core voters to get it. And the places that were not going to vote for you, you could not get black votes in any of those southern states, including North Carolina and Georgia. So can we please stop fooling ourselves with this ridiculous game of you going on podcasts with mostly white dudes, whining about the elites, when it's actually the elites that support you. Mustafa, you first.
You know what's interesting? I've sat down with him in meetings, done different interviews with him. And there is a problem that exists. And I don't know if it's a part of politics or what it is, but we love to extract race out of the conversation and try and replace it with class. And we have huge sets of examples, all kinds of studies that are out there that show where the real disparities lie. That's not to say that if you're poor or lower wealth and white, that you're not impacted, but we know there is a difference in that. And I don't know why he has not yet evolved into understanding that when you extract race, you are sending a message to the folks who are dealing with and carrying that burden that this country places upon them. I've sat in this before and heard how conversations with one set of folks went, and then I'm sitting outside in the chair, sort of digesting the meeting I just came out of, and then heard how conversations went with a different set of folks who looked different than the people who were in the room when I was in there. And there was more time given. Now, I understand I worked on Capitol Hill, and sometimes you may have limited time, but I would expect there to be equity in that from an individual who says that they are for the people. So, it's just a real interesting thing. The other part of it is that if you're really about, the folks who are being impacted, then you have to go and spend time with them, not spend time with them on the campaign trail, but you actually got to spend time with everyday folks on their back porch, in their kitchens, having conversations with them so that you've ground truth what's going on. So there's real authenticity in what you're sharing. I say that because when politicians come, whether it's Mississippi or West Virginia or a whole bunch of other places, and if you're a millionaire, it's sometimes hard for people to actually believe that you understand what they're dealing with on a daily basis. When you're trying to keep the lights on, put food on the table, trying to figure out, how you're going to pay for asthma medicine, or if you're going to actually have to go and pay the rent. So, you've got these individuals whom I think have some real caring, but there's this huge disconnect between what they're sharing and what they're doing. There's a quote that says, "I can't believe what you say because I see what you do." Folks need to really take that to heart if they want to be authentic in helping folks who have been vulnerable or who've been unseen and unheard.
Hey, Raven, Democrats haven't done enough for working class people. The last administration was the most pro-union administration since FDR. What the hell is he talking about?
I'll start by saying this. I really like a lot of Bernie Sanders' politics and positionalities. I think he gets a lot right. But to affirm what you all have been saying, I think in this instance, he really missed the mark. And I kind of want to scaffold out why the mark was missed. First of all, when we're talking about a class analysis that does not also account for gender, for race, for sexuality, for disability is an incomplete class analysis. So even this idea of talking about class in a way that is devoid of identity. Also, socioeconomic status is an identitarian factor. It is one that is porous and that changes and moves, but it is still an identitarian factor. So to frame it as if it's completely separate from these other lived experiences is a faulty place to start. The two things I want to talk about in this situation, first is this idea that the liberal elites are levying these unfair claims of bigotry. And secondly, this idea that identity politics is devoid of utility or isn't working for us. To that first point, when we're talking about the liberal elites, whatever that means in Bernie Sanders' imagination, there's an important distinction to be made here. There is a difference between accountability and moral absolutism. One thing I think we do very, very well on the left is we hold people accountable. We do not worship our politicians. When politicians do right by us, we praise them. And when they do wrong by us, we hold their feet by the fire. And I do think that is a huge distinguishing factor between how we move on the left and how they move on the right. The right feels way more cultish to me. They fall in line, okay? And so I value that on the left, we have the ability to hold people accountable when it matters. Now, where that gets dangerous and where I sort of see where Bernie Sanders is coming from is when that veers into moral absolutism. This idea that my positionality is the absolute correct one, and anyone who doesn't fall exactly where I do in this spectrum of belief is somehow inherently wrong. That is dangerous. And I think that's where our coalition falls apart sometimes because we opt into these carceral logics of discarding one another when someone isn't perfect. And at the end of the day, perfection is white supremacy culture. Expecting perfection is white supremacy culture. And I think that is a very, very dangerous trap that we do fall into sometimes. But that accountability piece is still there, and we do get it right a lot. And so I think it's also intellectually lazy to imply that when we hold these manosphere podcasters on the internet like Andrew Schultz accountable and call them bigoted or call out moments of bigotry, that is not true or is always false or is somehow just this liberal elite tactic. The last thing I want to talk about is identity politics, because real talk, Bernie Sanders doesn't understand what identity politics is. And I'm going to break it down for you. I have a master's degree in African-American studies. I'm deeply learned and read in Black feminisms. And I say feminisms with an S intentionally. If you know, you know. Black feminists coined the term identity politics. Okay. The term identity politics was coined in the Combahee River Collective Statement, which is a statement that was made by a cohort of Black women in the late 1970s. In this statement, they break it down for us. And I have the quote for you because I like to bring my receipts. Very briefly, they say in the statement, quote, This focusing upon our own oppression is embodied in the concept of identity politics. We believe that the most profound and potentially most radical politics come directly out of our own identity, as opposed to working to end somebody else's oppression. So what that means is, in this moment where the women's liberation movement is not contending seriously with race and the Black liberation movement is not contending seriously enough with gender, this cohort of Black women are like, you know what, we're gonna focus on getting us free, because we fundamentally believe that if we can figure out how to get us free, we'll figure out how to get everyone else free, because our oppression is interlocking with everyone else. So to focus on oneself, to turn in on oneself, is a particular sort of political taking up, right, that is being offered through identity politics. That is not what Bernie Sanders is saying, which to me demonstrates he doesn't understand what identity politics is. His reading of identity politics is, well, I'm Black and they're Black, so they can do no wrong. So I'm team them. No, if that were the case, then I'd be rocking with Candace Owens and I'd be rocking with Clarence Thomas, and I'm not. For me, that's not the end all be all. And in that sense, I hear what he's saying, right? It's not necessarily about how one identifies. It's like, what are your politics? Do you want to get free the way I want to get free? If you do, you're my people. I don't care what your identity is beyond that, right? If you want to get free the way I want to get free, dope. But to water down identity politics to this weird identitarian solely based fidelity is it's just untrue. It's not rooted in truth. And frankly, erases the labor of Black feminists who created identity politics as a particular way of imagining freedom in the first place. And some of that I definitely hold him culpable for, but also I think a lot of that is just emblematic of how people relate to language. This is not the first time that as a community we've invented language to imagine our own freedom, and it has been taken up and distorted and turned into something that it was never intended to be, and made to perform work that it was never intended to perform. And I think we see that really showing out in this conversation he's having with Andrew Schultz.
Sorry, Matt, you have to follow that.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to follow that, but I am going to steal that rhetoric of, I think she said, talking ourselves into carceral positions, which is just chef's kiss. I mean, what a beautiful way to say that, because I think that's emblematic of a lot of what we hear when we have these conversations about the silos and the far ends of the spectrum when we're having conversations about politics. So I think that's a great way to frame it. But all I'll add is this, really in two parts. The first thing is, I think a nuanced analysis allows us to look at what Bernie's saying and see if there's any value there. I will say, I have a lawyer that I have lunch with often. He's a dear friend of mine. I went out with him and a group of people today, and he has told me more times than I can count that he feels the Democratic Party failed by focusing on too many discrete identity issues. That doesn't necessarily mean he's right. That doesn't mean he's got all of the bona fides for electoral politics that some of the people on this panel do. But I do think it's important that there's at least some sentiment out there that there's some contingent of people in the Democratic Party who think there's been too much focus on identity politics. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think Bernie is speaking to that to some extent. And I think in order to think critically and to analyze this truthfully, we have to consider if there's any value in that statement. Now, the full stop part of that is, the reality is, Raven's exactly right. I think on the left, we do hold people accountable when we think they've done wrong. But what we do not do is we don't parse out what they're saying and what they actually mean and what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And the irony of all of this is the United States is definitely an oligarchy. We know that. But both Forbes and Yahoo Finance in the last 2 years have published numbers that say the number of households in the United States of America that have $1 million or more are between 8.8% and like 12%. So let's call the average 10%. That means if Bernie is worth more than $1 million, which my understanding is he's worth more than $3 million, he's in that rarefied air. So I tell you that to say populism is leverageable. You see it on both sides of the political aisle. You see it with Bernie and you see it with Mr. Trump. That's exactly what Mr. Trump has tried to do in his base in riling up poor people in southern states, primarily white people, telling them that the government is, too involved in their lives and taking away things that they're just as reliant on as the people he decries that don't look like them, Black and brown people and people in urban population centers. I say all of that to say, I think some of that is true with Bernie. I think for a long time, he has just been seen as this, perceived populist icon. But if you look at it, he's a part of the very oligarchy that he speaks against. So I think what we have to do on the left is be more critical sometimes at what we put up as our icons and whether those icons are living the truth that they espouse, number one. But number two, I think we have to consider, electorally is there any value in what he's saying? Because I'm hearing that on the ground. I'm hearing that from dyed-in-the-wool Democrats where they think that. And of course, that's anecdotal. That's not every single person's opinion. But I don't think that that's a conversation we shouldn't have. I think that is a conversation worth having. However, I think Bernie is also an 83-year-old man, and old people tend to say what they say without filters. And that may not be the marching orders we need to have as the Democratic Party going forward for electoral success. But I have heard it with my own ears from a man I had lunch with today that he has the same sentiment. So I think there's a question about what value is there, if any, in the statement.
All right. So let me ask this. So when he stated that, did you say, name them? Name the issues. Did that happen?
I honestly don't remember what we talked about after that.
Because here's my whole point.
A few times. He didn't mention it today.
No. But here's my whole point. And I guarantee you, matter of fact, I'm just go down the panel. Raven, when that happens to you, do you say, name them?
Name them in terms of like naming.
When somebody says, I really think Democrats are focusing too much on identity issues. Do the people who say that, do they ever name it?
No. I mean, oftentimes I feel like that's just a stand-in for I don't want to take seriously the experiences of people on the margin.
Right. But I'm saying they never name it. Hold on one second. Mustafa, when you ever hear that phrase, do you ever hear them name it?
No, they don't.
Now, so let me unpack it. When I force people to name it, do you know what I hear the most? Trans. What I hear the most when I force people to answer that question, this is what I've heard. Black people, white people. They felt that the Democratic Party elevated trans issues to the same level as African Americans and women and others, and that became a dominant issue. What I've heard from people say out of their mouths that they felt that the Biden administration in so many policy was trans. How do I know that that's what happened? What do Republicans do? What was Donald Trump's most effective commercials? When he pulled the clip of Vice President Harris talking about surgeries for trans prisoners. That actually started under Trump. But here's the point that I'm making. We allow people to use that phrase and not force them to say, no, name it. You keep saying, oh, well, I think the Democratic Party went too far. Name them. See, I want them to say, Democratic Party went too far for Black Lives Matter. Say it. I want them to say, yeah, Democratic Party, went too hard for this breaking the glass ceiling stuff with Hillary and Kamala. Say it. See, none of those podcasts is talking to Bernie. None of them made them. See, these people get to throw the phrase out. I see this on mainstream media. I see it. They never force them to name it. My deal is name it and claim it. And I just think that that's what we have to do. We have to start forcing people to actually put their name on it. No. Name me the specific issues or groups where they went too far.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that. Because, see, it's real easy to stay broad. That's supposed to be specific.
Yeah. Well, people don't want uncomfortable conversations, and that's the problem that we have. Because if we have people to name it, and you know me, I automatically ask folks, show me the proof.
Yeah, they can't name woke. They can't name, there's always something. My deal is, I'm not letting them off the hook. And Senator Bernie Sanders, I've seen him do this way too many times. No, Bernie, I need you to name it. When Bernie Sanders says, Democratic Party hasn't done anything for the working class. Shit. Pull a whole damn thing. Well, this. And then, okay, Bernie, tell me what more what more you want done. Tell me the bill that you sponsored to achieve that. I'm all about accountability. I'm not letting people off the hook. I'm just not letting them off the hook. I just can't. So that's just, I think, what we have to do. And between now and the midterms next year, we cannot let people, at least Slotkin, run her ass around Democratic Party for woke. No, hell no. I need black folks in Michigan to put our ass on the spot and say, no. What the hell do you mean when you say too woke? What do you mean by that? We cannot allow, I'm going to say this very clear. This is for Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Slotkin. This is for Senator Chris Murphy, James Carville, all of them. We cannot allow white Democrats to use the same language as Republicans when really what they're saying is, I think we are too black. I'm going to leave it at that.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.